My name is Clara, and I'm 42 years old. I am a baker. My hands aren't soft and delicate. They are dusted with flour, with small faded burns from years spent near hot ovens. But my heart, I always believed, was soft. For most of my life, I found peace in solitude. I found joy in the simple, honest alchemy of turning flour, water, and yeast into bread. My world was my bakery, a small but growing business I built from a single oven and a dream I inherited from my mother. One of her last pieces of advice to me, spoken in the quiet of her kitchen as she kneaded dough with practiced ease, was, "Clara, a woman's strength isn't in the man she finds, but in the world she builds with her own two hands. And if you ever let a man into that world, make sure he loves the baker, not just the bread." For years, I lived by those words. My bakery chain, Clara's Crusts, expanded across the city. I was successful, comfortable, and content. Then, I met Leo. He was 25, a burst of sunshine in my flour-dusted world. He had a smile that could disarm armies and a confidence that was both intoxicating and, in hindsight, utterly manufactured. He called himself a lifestyle entrepreneur, a title as vague as it was impressive. He walked into my flagship bakery one afternoon, not for the bread, but, as he told me, to meet the genius behind the brand. "I've never seen such an authentic and successful business," he said, his eyes scanning the rustic decor, the lines of customers. "You have magic in your hands." I was enchanted. For the first time, a man saw my hard work not as a job, but as an empire. He saw me not as a simple baker, but as a queen in my flowery kingdom. We started dating, and my predictable, structured life exploded into a vibrant chaos of late-night dinners, spontaneous trips, and public displays of affection that left me breathless. He saw my modest apartment and called it a temporary base of operations for a woman destined for a mansion. He saw my simple, debt-free life and mistook it for the quiet, unassuming posture of old money. I never lied about my finances, but I never corrected his grand assumptions either. It was flattering. I, a woman who found romance in the perfect rise of a sourdough, was suddenly living in a whirlwind romance novel. I let him believe what he wanted to believe. After a whirlwind year, he proposed in Paris, on a trip he had convinced me was a necessary business expense for brand visibility. The ring was far more extravagant than anything I would have chosen, purchased with a credit card I thought was a symbol of our shared future. A week before the wedding, I found myself in the office of my mother's old lawyer, Mr. Gable, a man whose wisdom was as aged and reliable as his leather-bound books. "Clara," he said, his kind eyes filled with concern, "I was your mother's friend, and I feel a duty to you. This young man, his ambition is palpable. At the very least, you must have a prenuptial agreement." My mother's words echoed in my ears. I knew he was right. That evening, I sat Leo down. The air in my cozy living room, usually filled with the scent of baking, felt charged and heavy. I tried to be casual. "Leo, my love," I began, my hands feeling unsteady. "Mr. Gable, my family's old lawyer, he suggested we sign a prenup. Just as a formality, you know? It's what successful people do." I expected a mature conversation, perhaps a little hurt, but understanding. What I got was laughter. He threw his head back and roared. It wasn't the warm, charming laugh I had fallen for. This was a sound that was sharp and cold, a sound that mocked my caution. It was the laugh of a hunter who has just been told his trapped prey might have a flimsy shield. He leaned forward, his perfectly sculpted features hardening for a fraction of a second. "Oh, Clara, you're so wonderfully traditional," he purred, his voice a silken weapon. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "A prenup? That's for people who are afraid of losing what they have." Then he looked me straight in the eye, a dangerous, predatory glint I had never seen before, and he delivered the words that would seal his own fate. "Don't worry, honey," he said, his smile a chillingly beautiful lie. "When this is all over, I'll get it all anyway." The words hung between us, a stark and brutal confession of his true intentions. He thought it was a joke, a display of his supreme confidence, but I heard it for what it was, a declaration of war. In that instant, the vibrant colors of our romance turned to a bleak, unforgiving gray. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, a coldness that extinguished the warmth he had brought into my life. My mother's warning wasn't just advice, it was a prophecy I had ignored. I forced a smile, a brittle thing that felt like it might shatter. "You're right. It's a silly, old-fashioned idea," I said, my voice sounding hollow and distant. "Let's forget it." He kissed me, a conqueror's kiss, and immediately turned his attention back to his phone, scrolling through pictures of a honeymoon in the Maldives that I knew would cost a fortune. My decision was made. The prenup was off the table. He wanted it all. Fine. He would have it all. He thought he was playing a game against a naive, love-struck baker. He had no idea I had just rewritten the rules. He wanted all of what I had, and I was going to make damn sure he got every last cent of it. Our wedding was an event that would have made royalty blush, orchestrated with theatrical precision by Leo and his equally opportunistic father, Victor. It took place at a sprawling, historic estate with fountains and manicured gardens, a venue whose one-night rental fee was more than the down payment on my first bakery. Victor, a man who oozed the scent of cheap cologne and expensive cigars, clasped my shoulder with a clammy hand. "Clara, my dear, you must spare no expense for my boy. He is destined for greatness, and he needs a wife who reflects that." I just smiled and nodded, watching Leo, my groom, preen for photos in a custom-tailored suit that cost more than my industrial oven. The whispers from his side of the aisle were like a constant buzzing commentary on their victory. "Leo really landed on his feet," one of his groomsmen slurred, clapping him on the back. "An older woman with a business empire? You're set for life, man." Leo would just flash his $1,000,000 smile, shrugging as if it were all just a happy accident. But his eyes, they scanned the crowd, soaking in the admiration and envy. He was the star of a movie he had written, directed, and produced, and I was simply the bankroll. I paid for the entire fairy tale using a combination of my business's liquid assets and several new platinum credit cards with dizzyingly high limits. It was the first time I had ever put my business in a position of financial risk. I didn't see it as a wedding expense. I saw it as the cost of admission to the greatest show on earth, his downfall. Our married life began. We stayed in my comfortable but modest house, which Leo now referred to as our transitional cottage, while he scouted locations for our primary estate. His mission to acquire my hidden wealth started immediately, disguised as a lifestyle upgrade. "Darling, that little sedan you drive is sweet, but it doesn't scream CEO of a culinary empire," he said one evening, looking out the window at my reliable car. "We need something with a bit more presence." I saw a stunning Porsche Panamera the other day. A week later, a metallic blue Porsche sat in my driveway, its engine purring like a contented jungle cat. Leo had handled the entire lease agreement, proudly listing my company as his primary financial backer. "It's for us, babe," he announced, tossing me the keys, though I knew my flour-dusted hands would never touch the steering wheel. Then came the wardrobe transformation. His wardrobe. He discovered a newfound passion for Savile Row suits, Swiss watches, and Italian leather shoes. "It's about building our personal brand, Clara," he would reason, adjusting the cuff of a $5,000 watch. "When I walk into a room, people need to know I'm the husband of a powerhouse. It's all about perception." Mr. Gable had advised me to open joint credit card accounts. "Let him hang himself with a rope of his own buying, Clara," he'd advised during one of our secret phone calls. Every statement is a chapter in the story he's writing for the judge. Just keep every single receipt. And I did. I became the world's most diligent librarian of my own impending bankruptcy. In my bakery office, I had a fireproof safe. Inside, I started a collection of binders, elegantly labeled Leo, wardrobe accessories, Leo, automotive, Leo, travel entertainment, Leo, miscellaneous extravagances. The collection grew with terrifying speed. In the first 3 months of our marriage, his personal spending exceeded $100,000. One night, I came home late, bone-tired from a 14-hour day of developing a new holiday menu. The house was blazing with light and thrumming with music. I walked in to find Leo and his father, Victor, celebrating with a bottle of champagne I recognized as being worth over $1,000. A massive, wall-sized television was newly mounted, and the floor was littered with boxes from high-end audio and gaming systems. "Clara, Angel, we gave the man cave an upgrade," Leo exclaimed, raising his glass to me. "A woman of your stature shouldn't be living with such outdated technology, my dear," Victor added, his eyes flicking over my simple work attire with barely concealed contempt. "It's a minor investment in the quality of life you both deserve." I stood there, a silent statue in my own home, looking at the fresh mountain of debt they had just created. The initial $10,000 I owed on a small business expansion loan now seemed like a pittance, a forgotten relic from a simpler time. I forced a smile that felt like cracking plaster. "It looks incredible," I said. "You have impeccable taste." Later that night, long after Leo had passed out in a champagne-fueled slumber, I was in my office, unable to rest. The weight of the lies was suffocating. I heard a low murmur from the garden. The office window was cracked open. It was Leo, on the phone with his father. I crept closer, every nerve in my body on high alert, and listened. "I know, Dad. I know it's taking longer than we thought," Leo was whispering, a sharp edge of frustration in his voice. "But the money has to be somewhere. A family trust, hidden investments, something. She's so focused on her stupid bread, she probably forgot she even has it." There was a pause. "No, she's not stingy. She lets me buy whatever I want. She just doesn't understand wealth. A new watch is nothing. I want the penthouse overlooking the park, the private jet. It's what I'm owed for putting up with this." Another pause. Victor's grumbling was indistinct. "Don't worry, Dad," Leo said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, chilling tone. "I have a new strategy. The sweet, loving husband act is getting old. It's time to apply some pressure. If she won't unlock the fortune willingly, I'll find a way to take it. The fool is so in love with me, she won't see it coming. She still thinks I'm impressed by her ability to knead dough." I shrank back from the window, a wave of nausea washing over me. The fool. That's all I was to him, a stepping stone, a walking, talking ATM he was trying to figure out the pin for. The pain in my chest was so sharp, so real, I thought I might be having a heart attack. But beneath the agony, a different feeling began to crystallize, a cold, hard, diamond-sharp resolve. I walked back to my safe and opened it. I looked at the bulging binders of receipts, the endless credit card statements, the luxury car lease agreement with his signature on it. This wasn't just a collection of evidence anymore. This was a finely crafted weapon. He wanted a war for my fortune. He was about to find himself in the middle of one. He just didn't realize he was fighting on a battlefield of his own creation, and the only treasure to be won was a mountain of debt. The 6-month anniversary of our marriage marked a distinct shift in the climate of our home. Leo's performance of the doting, patient husband began to fray at the edges. The gentle nudges towards a more lavish lifestyle became forceful shoves. The playful pouting turned into cold, hard demands. "Clara, my friend Marco, just closed a big deal, and his wife took him to Monaco for the weekend on a private jet." He'd sigh, scrolling pointedly through his Instagram feed. "It's about celebrating success. When are we going to start celebrating yours? I baked a special 10-layer cake for our anniversary, I'd reply, gesturing to the magnificent creation cooling on the kitchen counter. He wouldn't even look at it. That's lovely, babe, but a cake doesn't exactly scream Forbes 500. It's all about optics. The pressure became a daily ritual. He started leaving brochures for exotic real estate and luxury cars on my pillow. He began talking openly about financial advisors and asset managers who could help us diversify my portfolio. He was no longer just spending my money. He was actively trying to seize control of it. The breaking point came on a gray Thursday afternoon. I returned from a meeting with a new wholesale client to find the door to my home office, my one private sanctuary, ajar. A splintered hole gaped where the lock used to be. My fireproof safe, the one that held the binders, had been pried open, its heavy steel door hanging grotesquely on one hinge. Papers were strewn across my antique Persian rug like fallen leaves after a storm. And in the center of the chaos was Leo. He was on his knees, a crowbar discarded beside him, his hands covered in dust as he tore through my files. My personal tax returns, my private business ledgers, my bank statements. His face was a thunderous mask of confusion and pure, unadulterated fury. "Where is it?" he spat, his voice a low growl. "Where is the money, Clara?" I stood in the doorway, my bag dropping from my hand. I looked at the desecration of my private space, at the wild, desperate look in his eyes. The charming man I had married was gone. In his place was a cornered animal. "What are you talking about, Leo? What is this?" I asked, my voice betraying no emotion. It was eerily calm. "Don't you dare play dumb with me," he yelled, scrambling to his feet. He grabbed a handful of my bakery's profit and loss statements and flung them at me. "I've gone through every single piece of paper. This bakery makes a decent living, but that's it. Your savings are gone. There are no stock portfolios, no investment properties, no secret family trust. Where is the fortune?" I looked at him, truly looked at him, and all I felt was a vast, empty pity. "There is no fortune, Leo," I said quietly. He stared at me, his jaw slack. The fury in his eyes momentarily flickered, replaced by a look of utter bewilderment. Then, like a switch being flipped, the rage returned, 1,000 times hotter. "You lied to me," he whispered, the words shaking with a venomous rage. "All this time. You let me believe. You tricked me." "I never lied to you, Leo," I replied, my voice as cold and hard as stone. "You saw a story you wanted to be true, and you cast me as the lead. You built this entire fantasy yourself. I just declined to tear down the set." This whole thing was a setup?" he stammered, his eyes darting around the room, landing on the piles of credit card bills, bearing his own extravagant purchases. "You let me spend all of this, knowing?" "You wanted it all, remember?" I said, throwing his own chilling words back at him. "I'll get it all anyway. Isn't that what you told me?" His handsome face twisted into an ugly snarl. The mask was gone. This was the real Leo. "You will regret this, Clara," he hissed. "You think you're so smart? I will take you for every last penny you have. I'll get this house. I'll get this sad little bakery, and I will leave you with nothing. I will see you in court." He stormed past me, shoving my shoulder as he went, and slammed the front door so hard a picture fell from the wall. I stood motionless for a long time amidst the wreckage of my office. A strange, unexpected calm washed over me. The charade was over. The battle had finally begun. True to his word, I was served with divorce papers the very next day. The documents were aggressive, accusatory, and delivered by a courier with a smug grin. He had hired Marcus Thorne, the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state, a man known for leaving his opponents financially and emotionally destitute. I called Mr. Gable. I brought him the final pieces of my collection, pictures of my destroyed office, and the clear security footage from the hidden camera, which had captured Leo's entire rampage, including his final damning threat. Mr. Gable watched the video, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across his face. "Clara, my dear, he's a gift. A greedy, arrogant, and monumentally stupid gift. He has just handed us this entire case on a silver platter." "What's the final count, Mr. Gable?" I asked, my voice steady. He did a quick calculation on his notepad. "The original $10,000 business loan, plus the wedding, the Porsche lease, and his extensive efforts in personal brand building," he said, his eyes twinkling. "As of today, the marital debt totals $152,481, and it's still growing." I took a deep, steadying breath. He wants it all. "Oh, he'll get it," Mr. Gable chuckled, "and it will be a privilege to watch." Leo, in the weeks that followed, was a man celebrating a victory he hadn't yet won. He moved into a penthouse suite at the Four Seasons, telling everyone it was just a temporary measure while his lawyers unfroze his assets. He posted photos of himself on Instagram, surrounded by models, champagne bottles in ice buckets, with captions like, "Freedom tastes like victory," and "On to bigger and better things." He was building a public narrative of a man wronged by a deceitful wife, a man about to receive his rightful massive settlement. He had no idea he was celebrating on the deck of a sinking ship, a ship he himself had riddled with holes. The day of the settlement hearing was cold and stark, the sky the color of slate. It felt appropriate. I chose to wear a simple dark blue dress, the kind of dress a baker might wear to a serious meeting. It was my armor. When I walked into Marcus Thorne's intimidating conference room, I felt a quiet strength settle over me. Leo was already there, looking like the cover of a men's fashion magazine in a perfectly tailored suit. He was lounging in his chair, the picture of arrogant confidence. When he saw me, he offered a smile that was less a greeting and more a baring of teeth. His lawyer, the infamous Marcus Thorne, gave me a look that was meant to wither me on the spot. It failed. Mr. Gable and I took our seats. He placed his old worn briefcase on the gleaming glass table, a stark contrast to the slick, modern surroundings. The tension in the room was a living thing. Thorne began without preamble, his voice smooth and deep. "Clara, Mr. Gable, let's cut to the chase. My client Leo has been grievously wronged. He entered this marriage under false pretenses, led to believe in a financial reality that was intentionally concealed from him. However, he is a generous man. He is willing to settle for 50% of the marital assets. Based on our conservative valuation of Clara's bakery empire, her real estate holdings, and her family's considerable generational wealth, we are proposing a one-time settlement of $5 million. It's a bargain, frankly." He slid a beautifully bound portfolio across the table. It was a fantasy novel masquerading as a financial document, filled with wild speculations and baseless valuations of my empire. Leo smirked, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms. He winked at me, a grotesque familiar gesture. His eyes screamed, "Pay up! This is the price for wasting my time." I said nothing. I simply looked at Mr. Gable. He allowed the silence to stretch for a moment before he let out a soft, dry chuckle. "Mr. Thorne," he said, his voice deceptively mild, "that is an extraordinary work of fiction. Your researchers have a truly wonderful imagination." Thorne's jaw tightened. "It's a reasonable assessment, Gable, and you know it." "Do I?" Mr. Gable replied. He opened his briefcase, but he didn't pull out a portfolio. He pulled out a mountain of paper. Binder after binder, folder after folder. He stacked them on the table, creating a wall of documentation between us. The thud of each binder landing on the glass was a drumbeat of impending doom. "Let's discuss the real marital estate, shall we?" Mr. Gable said, his voice now taking on a crisp, lethal edge. "First, The bakery empire. You value it in the millions. Here, he said, sliding a single official document across the table, is an independent business valuation conducted last week. Clara's Crusts is a successful small business. Its net worth, after all assets and liabilities, is approximately $45,000. Leo bolted upright in his chair. Thorne snatched the document, his eyes scanning it furiously. Second, Mr. Gable continued, the real estate holdings. Clara owns her home, which was inherited from her mother long before the marriage, and is therefore her sole and separate property, not subject to division. There are no other properties. That's not true, Leo burst out. She was always talking about expanding, about investments. Indeed, Mr. Gable said, addressing the ceiling. She invested in a new proofing oven last year, a very wise purchase. Now let us proceed to the most substantial portion of the marital estate, the portion your client was instrumental in creating. He reached for the first, thickest binder and opened it. This, he announced to the silent room, is the marital debt. Leo's face began to lose its tan. Let's begin with the wedding, Mr. Gable said, as if reading from a grocery list. Total cost, $78,000. Financed via a personal loan, co-signed by both parties. Next, the Porsche Panamera. A 3-year lease, with your client as the primary driver. Outstanding liability, for which he is equally responsible, $41,000. He began pulling out credit card statements, spreading them across the table like a dealer laying out a losing hand. Then we have the joint platinum card. Current balance, $62,000. This includes, and we have receipts for every single item, Mr. Leo's new wardrobe from Milan, his collection of Swiss watches, and a boys' weekend in Las Vegas that cost more than my first car. He pushed a folder thick with receipts towards Thorne. Every purchase is accounted for. Thorne was no longer looking at Mr. Gable. He was staring at the paper trail, his face a grim mask. Leo looked as if he was about to vomit. But we're not done, Mr. Gable said, his voice almost a purr. The home upgrade, the entertainment system, the gaming consoles, all purchased on store credit, another $23,000. And finally, my client's only pre-existing debt, a $10,000 small business loan. He paused, the silence in the room now deafening. He calmly took out a small calculator, and with slow, deliberate presses, he began to add. Tap, tap, tap. He then turned the calculator around for all to see. The number displayed in stark black digits was 152,481. As of this moment, Mr. Gable stated, the marital estate is not a $5 million asset. It is a debt of $152,481. Leo's mouth was hanging open. No, that can't be, he whispered, his voice a hoarse croak. I'm afraid it is, Mr. Gable said. But here is where the story gets truly poetic. My client, as you are aware, offered your client a prenuptial agreement, a legal document that would have shielded him from her debts, and her from his. But your client laughed. He declined. He famously stated, I'll get it all anyway. Mr. Gable leaned forward, his kind eyes now as hard as diamonds, and locked his gaze on Leo. Well, Mr. Leo, you were prophetic. Under the laws of this state, in the absence of a prenup, all marital assets and debts are divided equally. 50-50. He tapped the calculator with his pen. One half of this debt is $76,240.50. That, sir, is your share. That is the all you were so confident you would get. Congratulations on your settlement. The room spun into a vortex of silence. The smug confidence had evaporated from Leo's face, replaced by a pasty, green-tinged mask of pure horror. He whipped his head towards his lawyer. Marcus, fix this! He shrieked, his voice high and shrill. Thorne, looking utterly defeated, slowly shook his head. He's right, Leo. The law is clear. The debt is marital. The debt is shared. But the money, Leo wailed, his voice cracking. The secret money. I stood up and spoke for the first time, my voice low and steady. There was never any secret money, Leo. There was just me, a baker, and you were never interested in getting to know her. He finally turned his full, horrified gaze on me. His face was a mess of confusion and dawning realization. You knew, he hissed. You planned this. You let me. I didn't let you do anything, I said, walking toward the door. I just gave you the freedom to be exactly who you are. You wanted it all. This is all. Mr. Gable calmly packed his briefcase. My client will sign the necessary documents to assume her half of the liability. We trust your client will make arrangements to handle his. We'll be in touch. We walked out, leaving Leo and his shark of a lawyer in the silent, expensive room, staring at a financial guillotine. As the heavy mahogany door clicked shut behind me, I heard a sound. It was the beginning of a broken, hysterical sob. It was not the sound of a confident entrepreneur. It was the sound of a parasite who had just realized it had killed its host and was now left to starve. The fallout was a swift and merciless avalanche. The carefully curated online persona of Leo, the lifestyle entrepreneur, disintegrated overnight. His high-powered lawyer, Marcus Thorne, dropped him as a client the second it became clear there was no multi-million-dollar payday to fund his retainer. Leo was left alone, adrift in a sea of consequences he had created. The calls began. The collectors for the wedding loan, the leasing company for the Porsche, the credit card companies, no longer charmed by his good looks, filed lawsuits. The glamorous penthouse he was living in served him with an eviction notice. His entire life, a performance funded by my hard work, was unceremoniously cancelled. His father, Victor, who had been his partner in this grand deception, distanced himself immediately. I heard through the grapevine that Victor told his friends his son had gotten mixed up with a deceitful, manipulative woman and had suffered a tragic financial setback. When the river of money ran dry, so did the paternal love. Leo's Instagram fell silent. The glossy photos of exotic locations and designer watches were gone, replaced by a digital ghost town. His fabulous life had been foreclosed on. Several months later, I was at a restaurant supply depot on the outskirts of the city, a rough industrial area. As I was supervising the loading of a 50-pound sack of artisanal flour onto a dolly, I saw him. It was Leo. He was wearing a grease-stained t-shirt and a pair of worn-out jeans. He was collecting dirty dishes from tables at a cheap diner next door, his movements slow and dejected. His once perfect hair was limp and unwashed. The vibrant confidence was gone, replaced by the dull, hollowed-out look of despair. Our eyes met across the dusty parking lot. For a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of the old Leo in his eyes, a flash of arrogant recognition. It was immediately extinguished by a wave of raw, burning shame. He dropped his gaze, turned away so quickly he nearly dropped his tub of dirty plates, and scurried back into the diner's kitchen, desperate to escape the sight of me. I didn't feel a surge of victory. I didn't feel triumphant joy. I felt a deep, profound wave of pity. He had chased a phantom, a life of effortless wealth he believed he was owed, and the pursuit had cost him everything. He had tried to steal a fortune that never existed and had been crushed under the weight of his own greed. I got in my truck and drove away, the scent of fresh flour filling the cab. I didn't look back. My own life, in contrast, began to bloom. It was a struggle to pay down my half of the debt, but each payment was a declaration of my independence. I poured my heart and soul back into my work. The bakery wasn't just my business, it was my salvation. The familiar warmth of the ovens, the comforting rhythm of kneading dough, the smiles of my loyal customers. This was real. This was mine. My business, which Leo had mocked as my stupid woodwork, began to flourish. Freed from the financial drain of his lifestyle, I was able to invest in new equipment and open 2 new locations. My success wasn't explosive or flashy. It was slow, steady, and built on the solid foundation of hard work and a quality product. I rediscovered the joy in simplicity. A quiet morning with a cup of coffee and the newspaper. A walk through the local farmer's market. The deep satisfaction of seeing a customer's face light up after their first bite of my signature pastry. I didn't need a Porsche or a penthouse. My mother was right. A woman's strength is in the world she builds, with her own 2 hands. One afternoon, a man came into my flagship bakery. He was a landscape architect, tasked with redesigning the new city park. His name was Ethan, and he had kind, intelligent eyes and a smile that reached them. He didn't compliment my brand or my empire. He looked at a loaf of perfectly baked brioche on the counter. "This is incredible," he said, his voice filled with genuine appreciation. "You have magic in your hands." It was the same line Leo had used, but from Ethan, the words felt different. They felt true. They weren't a line. They were an observation from someone who understood the skill and passion it took to create something beautiful. We talked for an hour, not about wealth or status, but about yeast, about fermentation, about the simple, profound joy of making something good. I don't know where it will go. Maybe it's just a conversation. Maybe it's the start of a new chapter. But for the first time in years, I feel a flicker of hope for a partnership built on mutual respect, not on a financial fantasy. I never offered Leo a prenup to be cruel. I offered it as a test of character, a test he failed more spectacularly than I could have ever imagined. He laughed and said he would get it all. And he did. He got all the debt, all the shame, all the misery. I was left with my bakery, my 2 hands, and my self-respect. And I have finally learned that this is the only fortune that truly matters. My name is Clara. I am a baker. And I am finally, truly free. If you liked my story, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to know how far my story has traveled. And what would you have done in my situation? I'm always curious to read your opinions. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Until the next story, take care. With love and respect.